I'm just leaving Apeldoorn. Had a very agreeable start to my morning, lovely breakfast with the Vrienden off the Fiets. Excuse me. And then it was on to see Mr. Oers, who I met last year and who was kind enough to show me around Apeldoorn and give me a historic tour, tell me all about the town. But now I'm heading off to a place called s-Graveland, and I think with trailer that's probably going to take me 4.5 to 5 hours. I think yesterday was a bit of a shock actually. I started out with good energy and confidence, but then did find travelling with the trailer a little bit heavy going really. The trailer's not necessarily packed for around the world, it's packed for around the world plus all of the belongings I'm taking back to the UK that have been living with Wouter for the last 8 months or more. So the trailer's disproportionately heavier than it will be when I finally embark and set off. Luckily the route I've got today is pretty straightforward. I don't think it goes anywhere interesting particularly, but I think it's straightforward and shouldn't get me into too much trouble. But I've said that before of course, so we'll have to see. Anyway, I'm going to sign off now, and I'll probably sign in again as and when I stop for a break or perhaps lunch. Thought I'd just pop back for a second. As I was saying, 4.5 to 5 hours of actual cycling ahead of me, but I thought you might like to see this little stretch, which sort of undulates quite nicely, but what you have missed of course is the sort of rise that brought me up a wee hill, hence me being very out of breath. I think if you're going to cycle around the world and you find a hill in Holland that's testing, you might be staring trouble in the face. But anyway, it's good cycling conditions and I'm well breakfasted, so I'll update you later. Hello, it's quite late in the evening now on Thursday. I've ridden from Apeldoorn to s-Graveland today. Only 50 miles, but with a few wrong turns and some tricky bits going through some towns and cities. My ride took a little bit over 4 hours, which was, well, it wasn't too bad. I also took quite a long lunch break, which is unusual, but I had to reply to a couple of emails and text messages. But I still managed to get here for 5 o'clock, so yeah, it was a nice day really cycling. A nice weather and nothing really to report on the journey particularly. That said, while the weather was fine today for me cycling, the weather forecast suggests sort of clouds and rain tomorrow, and as the sun has just gone down here, I noticed that the sky was full of dark, foreboding clouds. So fingers crossed for tomorrow, but I expect to be riding the 60 miles down to the Hook of Holland in miserable conditions, I would think. But as I say, I'll keep my fingers crossed. So having arrived here, I had a couple of chores to do. I've written my final postcards from the Netherlands, so they'll go in the post tomorrow. I've done what I seem to do whenever I stop overnight, is I've moved things from one bag to another bag, and I've moved some things from the trailer to the bags, and some things have gone from the bags into the trailer. But I've also just tidied up the tarpaulin temporary cover, which was waterproof anyway, but I just wanted to make sure tomorrow that it was all secure and sort of properly packed down. I mentioned earlier that I'd come a cropper on day one with the trailer, but that was at quite low speed, and although I fell off, it wasn't a problem at all. But today I was moving quite rapidly, and on one of the cycle paths I went over a little bit of ground where tree roots had come through and severely rotted a cycle path. And I hit it at speed, and the trailer, I could feel behind me, was wobbling on its wheels, sort of going boom, 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 and then eventually it sort of took itself down the cycle path and came level with me. But yeah, no damage to the trailer or its contents particularly, but the tarpaulin has taken a bit of a bashing, I have to say. So that was the reason I just checked it over this evening. And I've got it all ready for tomorrow, where we've got the expected rain. From a research and development sort of point of view, the few days with the trailer are proving to be quite informative. It's quite stable, and once it's going along it moves quite nicely, but you do have to be careful of keeping both wheels on the ground at the same time, or being very, very careful if you're going to sort of go over rough terrain really. I don't think there's much else to report. I forgot to mention that one of the calls I had to make at lunchtime earlier was regarding my ferry ticket for tomorrow night. I was looking at the sort of booking to see what time boarding started and what's the latest you could get onto the ferry. And I noticed that the address of the ferry was Harwich. So I sort of checked again and looked a bit closer at my ticket to find, instead of booking a Hook of Holland to Harwich ticket, I'd inadvertently booked a Harwich to Hook of Holland. So I was a bit concerned about that. But yeah, it was easy enough to deal with. I called them up. They said it wasn't uncommon for people to make that mistake, and my ticket has been corrected. But I would have felt a bit of an idiot turning up tomorrow with the wrong ticket. But all's well that ends well. So what I'm going to do now is just going to finish moving some more stuff around in my bags, but more importantly I'm going to take a fairly long shower and then try and get a good night's sleep and be on the road for around 8 o'clock tomorrow. Regardless of the weather, what I'm hoping to do is take about 8 hours of cycling to get to the Hook of Holland. I'd rather be sat bored in the Hook of Holland than stressing and struggling to make the time. So I'm going to try and leave here early in the morning, and then I'm going to try and get to the Hook of Holland early, and then just sit bored out my mind waiting for the boarding.